Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Thank you for your time. Goodbye. Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. Has Ghulam Nabi Azad's resignation letter revealed the truth about how the Congress party has been run for the last 8 years? Or is the letter full of exaggeration and distortion? And secondly, is the forthcoming election for the Congress president a time to revitalize and reinvigorate the party? Or could the election be a farce and a sham and at best produce a puppet president? Those are two of the issues I shall raise today with the Congress Party's Anandpur Sahib MP, former Minister of Information and Broadcasting, Manish Tewari. Manish Tewari, let's start with Ghulam Nabi Azad's resignation letter. I'll come to the forthcoming election of the Congress president after that. In his letter, Mr. Azad paints a grim and very disturbing picture of the way Congress has been run over the last 8 years. Has he revealed the truth? Or has he exaggerated and distorted?
Karan, good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me on your show. It's a pleasure talking to you as always. May I just rewind to contextualize to answer your question? If you may recall, in the March of 2020, just before COVID struck, and President Donald Trump happened to be in town, you and I had done an interview where I had outlined the various ideological and organizational challenges that the Congress party confronts. And if you do recall, after we wrote that particular letter in the August of 2020, you and I did a rather extended interview sponsored by Glenn Levitt Books, where again, I had tried to lay out the reasons as to why 23 of us had collectively written to the Congress president. So therefore, insofar as Mr. Ghulam Nabi Azad's letter is concerned, that's his personal communication. I have no intention of entering into either the merits or the contents of that letter, because that's something which he is in a better position to answer. However, suffice to say, the fact is that after we wrote that letter in the August of 2020, trying to lay out our concerns with regard to the challenges that the Congress party faces and needs to surmount, we've unfortunately lost 10 assembly elections in a row. Bihar, 2020. 4 in 2021, that is Kerala, Puducherry, West Bengal, and Assam. And West Bengal, we actually came down to 0 from being the single largest opposition party. And then in 2022, Punjab, Assam, the state of Manipur, Uttarakhand, and of course,
Mr. Tewari, these are details we know. I simply want you to tell me one simple thing. You understand the Congress party. You're a senior member of the party. You observed how it's functioned. Has Ghulam Nabi Azad revealed the truth or has he exaggerated?
Well, Karan, as I said, I am not going to go into Mr. Ghulam Nabi Azad's letter for the simple reason that's a letter which he's written. That letter is in the public domain, and he's in the best position to contextualize that communication to you.
Okay.
What I can merely point out, and what I can really help you with here, is to say that the concerns that we had articulated after two Lok Sabha defeats of 2014 and 2019 were germane concerns. And if those concerns would not have been germane, then we possibly would not have had this string of unfortunate losses between when that letter was written and when we are having this conversation.
Let me put to you some of the important points Mr. Azad made in that letter because they have attracted national attention. They have become issues of deep concern, not just to congressmen, but to people who believe India needs a critical, vital opposition party, and Congress is that party. That's why I want to put these issues to you. Now, first of all, Mr. Azad's letter is a brutal attack on Rahul Gandhi. He calls him childish, immature, and a not serious individual. He's also said he has no aptitude for politics or hard work. Is that how you see Rahul Gandhi yourself?
Arun, I have nothing personal against anybody. And I have nothing personal against Mr. Rahul Gandhi, or for that matter, any other Congress leader. I've spent 4 decades in the Congress party. My concerns remain what they were in the March of 2020, that we require ideological clarity, we require organizational sharpness, we require leadership, and more importantly, we require a narrative. So, therefore, insofar as personalities are concerned, they do not really matter in my scheme of things. In
But
my
tell me
scheme of
this. Is Rahul Gandhi, in your eyes, childish and immature? Does he lack an aptitude for politics? Because those are questions about someone who has been your party president.
Well, Karan, you keep coming back to what Mr. Ghulam Nabi Azad has written, and I absolutely refuse to be drawn into his communication and make a value judgment on what he has put in the public sphere.
Okay.
If he is in the best position to do that, it would be both improper and inappropriate for me to really seek to address what he has written after spending 50 years in the Congress party. That's for him to answer.
He goes one step further because he also makes a comment about Sonia Gandhi, who is presently your interim president. He says she is just a nominal figurehead. He says the important decisions over the last 8 years have been taken by Rahul Gandhi. And then he adds, in many instances, by Rahul Gandhi's security guards and PAs. Is Sonia Gandhi just a figurehead? And have Rahul Gandhi's security guards been taking decisions that she should have been taking?
I think, Karan, you need to step back a little. You see, as a political party, what is important is that you need to win elections. The reason you need to win elections is not because of personal pelf and power. The reason you need to win elections is because when you have your hands on the levers of governance, you can steer the direction of the country. So, therefore, under those circumstances, I don't want to enter into what somebody else has written with regard to what may or may not be factually correct, or may or may not be factually incorrect. You see,
But I'm asking you a question about your present interim president. Is Sonia Gandhi a nominal figurehead? That you can answer.
Well, when I have an opinion on that, I would certainly come back to you, because I am not going to be subject to a cross-examination on somebody else's letter. That is neither ethical on my part to be getting into it, and nor is it proper. If I have a particular point of view, I would put that point of view into the public space independently. I don't think that a cross-examination or an interrogation on somebody else's communication on which commentary has been done to death is really fair, because as I earlier pointed out to you,
Let me
that for me, the important thing is that 2024 is coming up.
absolutely.
We
I'll come to that
unfortunately,
in a moment's time. I'll come to that in a moment's time. But there is a part of Ghulam Nabi Azad's letter that possibly pertains to people like you, not you individually, but people like you. He says that the consultative mechanism which existed earlier was demolished by Rahul Gandhi. And my question is this: are people like you, who have been ministers in Manmohan Singh's government, who are senior MPs, are you feeling left out? Have you been pushed aside? Are you consulted or not?
all right, Karan, let me again answer this question with a little context. I met Mr. Ghulam Nabi Azad for the first time way back in 1988. He was then General Secretary of the AICC looking after Punjab. And we were waging a life and death battle against the forces of extremism, separatism, and terrorism. When most of us, and I was then a young General Secretary of the NSUI, would leave our homes in the morning, we were not sure whether we would come back in the evening. And it is that constant, consistent political battle, alongside the security battle which was fought, which redeemed Punjab. And we finally got a government in 1992 and peace in 1995. So the reason I'm telling you this story is primarily to underscore the fact that some of us have spent a long time and in extremely difficult situations and circumstances, including losing our family members at the altar of nationalism. And so, therefore, when you've come through that kind of an experience, you obviously do feel that whatever experience you bring to that table, that should be both appreciated and it should be also taken on board. And
but that's my question. Forgive me, I'm interrupting. That's my question. Are you then being consulted? You were, it seems, in 88, but what about 34 years later? Are you being consulted, or do you feel you're left out? Do you feel you're pushed aside? You are a very senior MP. You've been Minister of Broadcasting and Information with independent charge. Is your voice being heard? Are you being consulted?
Well, it is information and broadcasting and not the other way around.
Absolutely. But to answer my question, is your voice being heard?
Of course, see, if the broader consultative mechanisms would have worked, then obviously we wouldn't find ourselves in the position that we find ourselves today. The fact is, if colleagues, senior or junior, are leaving the party, people who are going out are those who've either spent a lifetime in the party or who came with certain aspirations into the party, which obviously they find unfulfilled. I think it is a cause for concern, it's a cause for introspection, and it would be naive on our part to really sweep it under the carpet.
So then you do agree that the consultative mechanism that existed earlier doesn't exist today?
I think, Karan, I think I've given you a full answer.
So just to make it clear, people like you with experience, knowledge, understanding are not being consulted.
Karan, I just now gave you a very full answer.
I know you did, but I'm just spelling it out for the audience. I'm just spelling it.
Well, as I think both of us are a little too old for this kind of stuff. I've given you a full answer, and I think it says it all.
Okay, then put this to me. This is an issue that's important. Parties depend upon consulting their experienced MPs. Did you ever, in your own capacity, raise with Sonia Gandhi that your talent, your experience, or knowledge is not being used?
Karan, I was Mrs. Sonia Gandhi's first political appointment after she became president of the Indian National Congress in 1998. She appointed me as the president of the Indian Youth Congress. That is essentially the first political appointment that she ever made. Since that day, with Mrs. Gandhi, there has been a running dialogue. There has been a constant communication whereby I try and keep her apprised about what I think is going on, either in the party or in the country, or for that matter, even internationally, given the fact that I happen to travel quite a bit. And if she has anything to ask, those answers I try and give in all honesty as possible. So
So
therefore,
I'm just repeating what you said. You keep her apprised of all that's happening. That means you've kept her briefed about your concerns about how the party is functioning. You've also kept her briefed about the fact that and I'm quoting you, that the broader consultation mechanism has not worked as we would like. You've kept her briefed about all of that.
Well, Karan, the communication between the Congress president and this gentleman that you're talking to, if I can call myself a gentleman, is obviously a privileged communication. If I would have wanted it to be in the public space, I would have put it out myself in the public space. But suffice to say, insofar and to the best of my ability, I have tried to keep her completely apprised of what I think are the concerns and the challenges which confront the Indian National Congress.
Okay, that is very important. I'm just repeating it. I have tried to keep her completely apprised of the concerns that drive the Indian National Congress. I think that answers it completely.
Concerns that confront the Indian National Congress, Karan, sorry to
correct. One last question. Given that Mr. Azad has reflected a number of concerns, do you believe that these are issues that were ever made known to Sonia Gandhi by people other than you? Or because she's Rahul Gandhi's mother, did people shy away from belling the cat? In other words, have people gone to her and said, we have concerns and doubts about your son's functioning?
Karan, there are two sets of buckets that I would like to put this question into. There were certain shared concerns that a number of us had. Those shared concerns got reflected in the joint letter which we had written. Then, of course, there are individual concerns which different people may have. And one set of those concerns could possibly have been reflected in Mr. Ghulam Nabi Azad's resignation letter. Other people also may have a similar communication with the Congress president. I am not privy to what those communications could possibly be or are. But as I said earlier, in my capacity, to the limited extent possible, in my understanding, I have always, whether we were in government, we were not in government, whether it was the NDA BJP government from 1999 to 2004, it was the UPA government from 2004 to 14, or subsequently when we've been in the opposition, whether I was in parliament or not, I have always endeavored to articulate my point of view privately, but with the fullest of candor.
Okay, that's again very important. You have always endeavored to articulate your point of view privately, but with the fullest of candor. And I take it you're saying you've articulated this to the president of the party.
Well, as I said, that if private conversations needed to play themselves out in the public space, I would have done so personally. I'm not even getting into what that communication is. But suffice to say, you asked a question that is there a communication between the so-called, quote unquote, in your words, senior leaders of the Congress party and the Congress president? And to that, I have answered that insofar as I am concerned, I have tried to keep that communication going.
That is a crystal clear answer. I think people will understand exactly what you said. Let's then come to the second big issue I want to raise with you today. It's the fact that the Congress party is scheduled to hold elections to choose a new president on the 17th of October, which is just about 6 weeks away. How do you view these elections? Do you see it as a credible opportunity to revitalize and reinvigorate the party? Or do you fear that they could end up being a farce and a sham and perhaps producing a puppet president?
Well, it's absolutely a credible opportunity, provided we use it properly. And the reason why I say that, I think if you allow me a minute or two, I would really just lay out how this organizational election, in theory, is supposed to play itself out. So first of all, you have a membership. After that membership is over, that membership is segregated into booths across the country. then every booth is supposed to elect its own president and one delegate to the Block Congress Committee. The Block Congress Committee, in turn, elects one delegate to the Pradesh Congress Committee and elects 4 delegates to the District Congress Committee. And the District Congress Committee, in turn, elects its own president and its own executive. The Pradesh Congress Committee similarly elects its own president and executive and is also the electoral college for the president of the Indian National Congress. Subsequently, the same Pradesh Congress Committee elects 1/8 of itself as delegates to the All India Congress
Can I interrupt?
So that's that. Allow me to complete. That is the theory of it. In reality, what happens is that through a consultative mechanism, you have a process whereby these positions are filled up at various levels. Now, if a proper election were to be held, like it was held in 1991, when I was elected as a member of the Pradesh Congress Committee from Chandigarh, and subsequently elected to the All India Congress Committee by the Pradesh Congress Committee delegates, and subsequently you had a working committee election in Tirupati, and of course you had Mr. Narasimha Rao getting elected unopposed as Congress president. This is a golden opportunity to revitalize the party, provided you have a proper, credible electoral process at all levels.
But then answer this question. Do you believe a proper election will be held? Will it be a proper electoral process?
Well, you see, the difficulty is that we often get focused only at the top.
No, hang on. Answer my question. Don't deflect, Manish Tewari. It's a critical question. You raised it. I'm simply putting it back to you. Will a proper election be held?
Well, if you allow me to answer it, Karan, I will answer it for you. What is a proper election? A proper election is if what is stated in the Congress Constitution is followed to the T, all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, and elections at all levels are held in a absolutely credible and transparent manner.
But so that clearly isn't happening. That clearly isn't happening.
Well, that is the reason why, even with regard to the electoral college for the Congress president, yesterday, I had publicly articulated, supported by Mr. Shashi Tharoor and Mr. Karthi Chidambaram, that the list, the electoral college, or the electors of the Congress president's election, that list should be put out in a transparent manner in the public space.
So if I understand correctly, the reason why it's important for the electoral rolls to be published and made available to everyone is so that you can check that a proper electoral process has been followed from the very bottom upwards to find the electors to choose the president. That is your concern.
Absolutely. In fact, you see, in any electoral process, the process is as important as the outcome.
Absolutely.
And therefore, for the election to be credible, the process has to be completely transparent and it has to be credible. And now, how can you possibly have an election to the post of Congress president if you do not know as to A, who the electors are, and number two, who are the people who are even qualified to participate in that election or contest that election? Now, you have to be a PCC member to contest the election. Your nomination has to be endorsed by 10 members of, or 10 Pradesh Congress Committee members. At this point in time, I myself do not know whether I am in that list or not. Now, suppose, hypothetically speaking, somebody was to contest an election. As of today, he or she does not know whether he or she is a PCC member. Who are those 10 people whose signatures they are supposed to seek in order to present a valid nomination? And therefore, that is why we had argued, or at least I had argued yesterday, and I have written to the chairperson of the Central Election Authority, Mr. Madhusudan Mistry, in this regard, that let the list be available in a comprehensive manner in a particular place. Most efficiently, it can be put on the website of the Indian National Congress with the complete address of the electors, so that people know, and there is no process dominance and there is no abuse of process.
This is why I presume Mr. Azad said that the election will be a farce and a sham. We don't know who the electors are. We haven't gone through the process transparently. Therefore, there's a very good likelihood the process will be a farce and a sham.
Well, again, you're asking me to make a value judgment on somebody else's letter, which I'm not going to do. All I'm saying is we are at the starting point of an election process to elect the president of the Indian National Congress. This is the time to get it right. And that's why, as I pointed out, I have written to the chairperson of the Central Election Authority. If I'm given to understand correctly, some of my other colleagues have also raised similar concerns, both orally and in writing. And we do await a response, because eventually, there cannot be a credible election if there is process dominance, which leads to an abuse of process. And as the lawyer, I can tell you, in competition law, that's a very, very strong ground.
You've made your point once again. You've made your point once again crystal clear. And I will simply repeat the thing you said, that the process needs to be credible if the outcome is to be credible. And if you don't know who the electors are, if they haven't been elected properly and fairly and freely at all the different stages that you spelled out, then the process won't be credible and the outcome won't be credible. Let me come to a different issue.
May I add to that?
But let's not get stuck on this.
May I add to that? You see, why do you hold elections?
Manish, let's not get stuck on this. We have limited time.
No. Why do you? This is important. You hold elections in order to revitalize your organization from the booth to the national level. That's the objective of holding internal organizational elections, and that's why it is important that the process needs to play itself out fairly at every level.
Let me come to two other important issues. Some of your colleagues are making a huge effort to convince Rahul Gandhi to stand as a candidate in the presidential election. And it's widely believed that if he does, he'll win. He may not even be challenged. So my question is this: in the present circumstances, should Rahul Gandhi stand as a candidate, or would that be a mistake?
Well, that's a personal call. That's a personal decision that he has to take. After all, an election has been announced. Everybody is free to take his or her call. And let's not forget the fact, in 2017, all of us had unanimously elected him. In 2019, unfortunately, he chose to step down, maybe for the right reasons, taking responsibility for what happened in the 29 Lok Sabha elections. So therefore, I don't think I should be second guessing what is somebody else's personal decision. You see, eventually it is a calling.
I understand. Let me come to the second question. I'm pushing you because time is our enemy. Let me come to the second question. Attempts are being made to put up a candidate that would be acceptable to the Gandhi family. In the newspaper, they're referred to as proxy candidates. Would you like to see such a person as the head of the Congress party, or would that in fact nullify the whole hope that you would be reinvigorating the party through an election?
Karan, we are, as of today, 24 days to the nominations even opening up. So therefore, there will be extensive and intensive consultations which will take place, both within the party and outside. People will be consulting their colleagues. And eventually, let's see who are the candidates or who is the candidate. And then it would be appropriate to really use terminology like proxy candidate or somebody who's just been put there primarily for the sake of being a figurehead. And obviously, as Mr. Digvijay Singh had also said, I think in a television interview to one of the channels that if the person is not to his liking, he may consider running. I mean, there are various other people who are in a similar consultative process with their colleagues. And I think it will be fair to allow that consultative process to play itself out till the 1st of October 2022, which is
Okay.
the last of nominations.
Are you yourself likely to be a candidate in the presidential election? Are you considering throwing your hat in the ring?
It would all depend, Karan, on what my colleagues have to say. Eventually, I've spent time with people in the NSUI, in the Youth Congress. I have looked after various states, been spokesperson of the party since 2008, defended it in perhaps the most adverse circumstances. And you do not throw your hat in the ring just because you wake up one fine morning and maybe you've got out of the right side of the bed and you decide to fight for president. After all, there are 9,100 electors.
Hang on.
And you
Have I?
you
Let me
you
just let me see if I've understood correctly. This is a decision you'll take after consulting your colleagues. You want to find out what they think and what advice they give you.
not only that, also do some very serious soul searching as to whether you are personally the right person for that job. The
So
job
you're
comes with an
considering the matter.
enormous amount of responsibility.
At the moment, you're considering whether you should be a candidate. You haven't decided either way.
Well, at the moment, I am in conversation with a large number of our colleagues as to what should be the appropriate way forward that would strengthen the Indian National Congress.
And that includes your own candidature. That is being discussed as well.
Well, I have given you a full answer.
Okay. And that answer, as I heard it, is that you're considering the matter. You haven't decided either way.
Well, we are considering what would be the best course of action to strengthen the Indian National Congress.
What do you believe should be the role of Rahul Gandhi? And if I might add, his sister Priyanka and his mother Sonia Gandhi, if neither of the three are to be presidents of the party, what role should they play in Congress?
Well, again, that's a hypothetical question. You see, as I earlier pointed out, that they've also been a part and parcel of this great institution for the better part of their lives. So, therefore, why discount anybody at this stage and start carving out a role for themselves in the ether? These questions, if at all they need to be answered, they will have to be or they should be deliberated after the 17th of October when the process concludes.
But you have no idea about the sort of role you'd like to see the Gandhis play if they are not at the top as president? You have no idea about that?
Well,
Or is that
that's a question which is absolutely in the realm of complete hypothesicity, if I can use that phrase. And therefore, hypotheses are situations that you use in a court of law when you run out of real arguments.
in which case, my last question. What do you believe are the qualities the new Congress president should have if he or she is going to A, revitalize the party and build it up as a credible national opposition that can win an election? And secondly, respond and take on the challenge of the BJP and Narendra Modi in particular. What qualities should this person have?
Absolute ideological clarity, eons of organizational experience, and most importantly, the ability to be on the treadmill 24 into 7.
When you say ability to be on the treadmill, that means hands on 24/7.
Absolutely. I mean, in the sense that it's an executive presidency.
Is there anyone that you think has that you can identify? Or is that difficult for you to say at this moment?
No, there are a large number of people, including the present president of the Indian National Congress. And if you were to go back to the interview that we had done in the March of 2020, which made headlines, I had even then articulated what a substantive part of the rank and file of the Congress feels. So
In
therefore,
fact, can I interrupt? In that interview, I think I'm recalling the right one. You very clearly said you would like to see Mrs. Gandhi continue as president for the foreseeable future. So let me
which
end
she
by
has.
asking, is that still your position?
Well, Karan, now we have an organizational process which is playing itself out. And at that point in time, we had an interim arrangement. And I had told you that interim arrangement should continue for the foreseeable future, primarily because that is what an overwhelming part of the rank and file feel. Now that an election schedule has been announced, I think it is the time for everybody to take their personal call and do some introspection, do some soul searching, look at the challenges ahead, and see if they find themselves to be in the best position to be able to revitalize this great institution.
All right, Manish Tewari, thank you very much for this interview. I think you've made 2, 3 things very clear. First of all, if the broader consultative mechanism had worked, we wouldn't find ourselves in the position we do today. You've also made clear that you've used all the opportunities privately, but with full candor to convey your thinking to senior leaders. And I presume that means Sonia Gandhi. But obviously, you're not going to tell us in public what you said to her, but you have shared your thinking fully and privately with her. And the third important thing you said is that for the election of the new Congress president to be credible, the process needs to be transparent and credible. And that is why we need to have the electoral rolls in public so that we know that at all the different stages where elections are necessary, those elections have happened. I thank you for that interview. For those who can read between the lines, they will realize that you said some very important things. Take care.
Thank you very much, Karan. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Thank you for your time. Goodbye.